First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mr. Hightower, and I'm your new music teacher.
You think The Steve Harvey Show was just a fun high school sitcom? Wrong. Behind those laughs were dark secrets and shocking scandals fans never knew. From 1996 to 2002, The Steve Harvey Show ran for 6 seasons, 122 episodes, becoming a landmark black sitcom. But few could have guessed. The star Steve Harvey once lived out of an old car for 3 long years. A key character was nearly written out of the script. A young talent was tragically murdered in real life, leaving a void that could never be filled. And there were explosive accusations Steve Harvey accused of stealing material from another sitcom. This wasn't just a sitcom. This was the dark side of Hollywood, where laughter hides ruthless stories of injustice and tragedies fans could never imagine. Premiering on the WB in 1996, The Steve Harvey Show quickly became one of the most popular sitcoms of the 90s. Even today, fans still recall it as a part of their childhood. The story followed Steve Hightower, played by Steve Harvey, a once famous funk singer whose glory days had faded, forcing him back to work as a high school music teacher in Chicago. By his side was Cedric Robinson, played by Cedric the Entertainer, his loyal best friend and colleague. What set this sitcom apart was the way it mixed everyday humor with awkward classroom romances and positive messages for black students, something few shows of that era managed to do. Wendy Raquel Robinson starred as Principal Regina Greer, strict yet charming. Terry J. Vaughn as Levita Jenkins, the witty secretary who later became Cedric's wife. William Lee Scott as Bullethead and Merlin Santana as Romeo, the mischievous but lovable students. And Coretta, the Oxcox, played by rapper Lady of Rage, stood out as one of the coolest on-screen students of the time. More than just entertainment, The Steve Harvey Show carried cultural weight. It helped shape images of education, friendship, love, and ambition in the black community of the late 90s. That's why when the cast later began revealing behind-the-scenes stories, fans realized behind those smiles on screen was a far more complicated picture full of drama, heartbreak, and untold secrets. Steve Harvey and the 3 years of homelessness, from a car seat to the spotlight. Imagine a 30-year-old man with a burning dream of becoming a comedian, yet without even a roof over his head. That was Steve Harvey in the late 1980s. For 3 years, he lived quietly inside a beat-up 1976 Ford Tempo. That car was his bedroom, his living room, and the fragile container of his dreams. At night, when the streets grew silent, Steve curled up on the seat using a towel for a blanket. Sometimes he cracked the window just to breathe, though he always feared the sound of a police knock. By day, he wandered from club to club, chasing small comedy gigs. The audience laughed, but when the lights went out, Steve returned to reality. Gas stations, public pools, and highway restrooms became his places to wash up just enough to not look too ragged when he stepped on stage. There were days when he could only afford one cheap sandwich, dividing it into 3 meals. Other nights he went hungry, but still kept writing down jokes in a little notebook, the only weapon he believed could lift him out of this hell. Steve once recalled, "I cried in that car many times, not because I was weak, but because I was afraid I'd die there before anyone ever knew who I was." And then after 3 years of torment came a turning point. One performance changed everything, opening the door to television, and eventually to his breakthrough with The Steve Harvey Show. When audiences laughed at teacher Steve Hightower, few realized that character was a reflection of the real Steve Harvey, a man who had once hit rock bottom, who understood the pain of being an outsider more than anyone. Here's a little-known secret: the name Steve Harvey, so familiar on American television, isn't actually his birth name. He was born Stephen Harvey. His parents named him after Broderick Crawford, the celebrated star of the 1950s series Highway Patrol. A small detail, but one that carried a sense of destiny. Steve was born tied to the screen, as if fate had already chosen his path into entertainment. Ironically, life first pushed him into homelessness, and hardship stripped of any hint of glamour. Yet in the end, that cinematic mark in the name Stephen, drawn from a television legend, felt like a prophecy. No matter how many times he fell, he would always find his way back to become an icon before the camera. Those 3 years in a car forged the resilience that Steve Harvey poured into his role as Mr. Hightower. But if that was the story of the lead actor overcoming adversity, then the behind-the-scenes world of The Steve Harvey Show had its own shocking twist, and it revolved around the name Levita Jenkins. Levita almost got cut from the show. When the series moved into its 2nd season, the original script gave Levita only a small role, a witty secretary meant to pop in for a few episodes, just to spice up the classroom atmosphere. In the original plan, Levita had no long-term future. Once the classroom storyline wrapped, her character would disappear quietly. But from the very first scenes, something unexpected happened. Terry J. Vaughn, the actress who played Levita, created explosive chemistry with Cedric the Entertainer. Just one mischievous glance, one perfectly timed sarcastic line, or a sly half-smile was enough to send audiences into laughter. The energy on set shifted instantly. Producers looked at each other and said, "We just struck gold." What was supposed to be a fleeting side role was rewritten, expanded, and turned into a cornerstone of the sitcom. And then the miracle came. Terry J. Vaughn didn't just make Levita unforgettable to fans, she went on to win 3 consecutive NAACP Image Awards. A feat that even lead roles would envy. Today, when people recall The Steve Harvey Show, they instantly think of Levita sharp, charming, and hilariously witty. Yet few know that with one stroke of a pen, her character might never have existed. A small decision ended up rewriting the history of this sitcom. Levita is living proof of Hollywood's strange luck, from a role nearly erased to the very soul of the series. But not everyone in the cast found such a happy ending. If Levita was a miracle, then Romeo, the smooth-talking heartthrob of Hightower's class, became the tragedy that left fans in shock. Romeo's real-life story turned out to be the deepest wound the Steve Harvey Show would ever endure. Romeo Merlin Santana, a tragic ending on The Steve Harvey Show. Romeo Santana was unforgettable. The handsome, stylish student with his shirt tucked in and his silver tongue always working. Romeo knew exactly how to make the girls blush and always found ways to bend the rules, teasing teachers and classmates alike. His slick yet charming personality made Romeo one of the most beloved characters on the show. Behind the scenes, Merlin Santana, the actor who brought Romeo to life, was truly a rising star. Born in 1976 in New York to a Dominican family, Merlin started his career early. At just 14, he made waves on The Cosby Show as Stanley Olivia's boyfriend, played by Raven Simone. From there, Merlin quickly caught Hollywood's eye, landing roles in major TV series like Moshe Sister Sister, and of course shining brightest on The Steve Harvey Show. Fans were certain Merlin was destined for more. With his good looks, effortless charm, and confident screen presence, he was predicted to become one of the standout black stars of the 2000s. But just as his career was beginning to soar, tragedy struck and ended it all. The fateful night of 2002. On November 9, 2002, Merlin Santana left the home of a female friend in the Crenshaw area of Los Angeles. At the time, his career was on the rise. He had just wrapped several projects and was preparing for even bigger roles. No one could have imagined this would be the last night of his life. As Merlin stepped out of the house and sat in the back seat of a car, another vehicle suddenly pulled up. In the darkness, a gun was aimed directly at him. Seconds later, gunfire ripped through the night. A bullet pierced his head, ending his life instantly. He was only 26 years old. The case was later investigated. According to testimony, the very same female friend had fabricated a story claiming Merlin had bad intentions toward her. Her male companions ambushed him to teach him a lesson, but that lesson turned into murder. The shooter was arrested and sentenced to a long prison term, yet justice could not make up for the loss of a life and a talent stolen too soon. Shock for colleagues and fans. News of Merlin Santana's murder spread quickly through Hollywood. The entertainment world was stunned. The cast of The Steve Harvey Show could hardly believe it. Romeo, the funny, radiant presence on set every day, was gone in such a brutal tragedy. Steve Harvey was speechless when he learned the news, later sharing in an interview. Merlin was one of those rare young talents. The kid had it all: looks, charm, and a beautiful heart. But life was just too unfair. Terry J. Vaughn Levita also admitted through tears, "We always saw Merlin as the baby brother of the family. His death left a hole that nothing can ever fill." Fans were devastated. They had grown attached to Romeo's slick lines and mischievous charm on screen. They never imagined that smile would be extinguished at just 26. Fan forums at the time overflowed with grief, many calling it one of the greatest losses for black sitcoms of the 90s. Merlin Santana left behind several memorable roles, but his portrayal of Romeo in The Steve Harvey Show remained the most iconic. With his sudden passing, Romeo became forever young in fans' memories, never growing older, never out of character. And that was the greatest tragedy, a rising star on the cusp of success snuffed out because of a fatal misunderstanding. The death of Merlin Santana was a bitter reminder that Hollywood, no matter how bright the lights, will always conceal its cold, dark corners. Merlin Santana's death left an irreplaceable void, turning the Steve Harvey Show into a memory both sweet and sorrowful. But that wasn't the only secret that made the sitcom's behind the scenes so explosive. If Romeo was the real-life tragedy, then the show's leading star found himself caught in a battle inside the comedy world itself. Drama. Cat Williams accuses Steve Harvey of stealing material. A clash of honor. Between two generations of comedy. In comedy, creativity is everything. You can fail, you can be broke, you can get booed off stage, but as long as you keep your originality, you'll be respected. The one thing you cannot afford is being branded a thief. If you're accused of stealing material, your career is finished. And the shocking twist was that Steve Harvey, the brightest star from the Steve Harvey Show, got pulled into such an accusation. The man who lit the match, none other than Cat Williams, the wild, brilliant, trouble-prone comedian known for his fearless jabs. During an appearance on the Podcast Club, Shay Shay, hosted by former NFL star Shannon Sharp, Cat Williams, didn't hold back a single ounce of venom. He flat out accused Steve Harvey of borrowing ideas from the sitcom Hangin' with Mr. Cooper to create the Steve Harvey Show. The same Steve that went to go watch Mark Curry do his whole sitcom, and then stole everything Mark Curry had. That statement reignited a long-simmering comparison. Was the Steve Harvey Show, 1996-2002, just a copy of Hangin' with Mr. Cooper, 1992-1997? The similarities are hard to deny. One starred Mark Cooper, a former basketball player who returned to teaching. The other centered on Steve Hightower, a former funk singer who also went back to the classroom. Both shows shared a high school setting, both featured a once-famous black man starting over, both surrounded him with mischievous students as the comedic spark. For many, Cat's accusation didn't sound far-fetched at all. The media jumped in immediately. Talk shows, magazines, and entertainment outlets pounced on the story. Some fans even made side-by-side videos comparing scenes from both series, pointing out similarities to prove that Steve Harvey had borrowed the formula. But others pushed back, insisting that while Harvey may have borrowed the framework, the soul of the sitcom was completely different. The Steve Harvey Show wasn't just about a classroom. It carried funk musical culture and Harvey's own real-life struggles, including his 3 years of homelessness. Caught in the storm, Steve Harvey didn't shy away. In an interview, he fired back, "Everybody in comedy is inspired by somebody. But my show, that's my life on screen. Ain't nobody lived Steve Harvey's life but me." His response only fueled the debate. One side claimed Harvey was simply shrewd, taking an existing formula and turning it into his own empire. The other side defended him, convinced that only Steve Harvey could transform an old idea into a sitcom that would live on in fans' hearts. Even though Steve Harvey went on to thrive, expanding his career into game shows, talk shows, and a massive television empire, the scar remained. It left behind a lingering question. Was he a creative genius, or just a clever copycat? And that's what made the drama so haunting. It never had a definitive answer, leaving a question mark hanging over the legacy of the Steve Harvey Show. But the accusations of borrowed ideas were only the surface. Behind the spotlight, the Steve Harvey Show hid a much harsher reality. Power and money were far from evenly distributed. Paychecks and injustice. From day one, the Steve Harvey Show established an unequal order. Steve Harvey stood at the top while everyone else revolved around him. He wasn't just the lead actor. He had the final word on scripts, controlled the show's direction, and more importantly, he was the face WB Network banked on. That position made Harvey the king on set, and nothing showed it more clearly than the paycheck. While Steve Harvey signed a contract worth $20,000, $30,000 per episode, considered lavish for a black sitcom on WB at the time, supporting cast members were pulling in just $2,000, $5,000 for the same episode. That meant Harvey could earn 10 times what his colleagues made for standing on the same stage. This gap quickly became the subject of quiet grumbling behind the scenes. Wendy Raquel Robinson, who played Regina Piggy Greer, the sharp principal, and the show's strongest character, after Steve once hinted bitterly in an interview. "Sometimes I felt like a shadow. Audiences loved Regina, but the contract showed me who the real center of the show was." It wasn't just a sigh of disappointment. It was a veiled accusation against a system that crowned Steve and left everyone else as mere support. Terry J. Vaughn, who played the funny Levita, didn't escape the cycle either. She admitted she was often given nothing more than comic relief scenes, cracking jokes to fill gaps, then disappearing with no bargaining power over pay. Whatever the script gave me, I played it. And the paycheck? Well, I just had to accept it, Terry confessed. Compared to other hit sitcoms of the time, like Friends or Seinfeld, the disparity looked even harsher. The cast of Friends could negotiate collectively, raising their salaries to millions per episode in the final seasons. But the cast of The Steve Harvey Show never had the chance to put themselves on the same level as Steve Harvey. For them, the series was just a steady job. For Steve, it was a launchpad to build a media empire. Unequal pay isn't unusual in Hollywood, but in the context of The Steve Harvey Show, it left a deep fracture. Every time they stepped on stage, the cast laughed and played off each other. But when the paychecks came out, the line between the star and the supporting cast was brutally clear. That divide planted the seeds of resentment and tension, which only years later did some of the cast dare to reveal in scattered interviews. If money built the invisible wall between the cast, then creative control became the fuse for deeper battles beneath the surface of the show. Tension and hidden drama. To audiences, The Steve Harvey Show was always filled with laughter. But like any long-running TV series, it carried its share of behind-the-scenes tensions. First, it's important to note there was no public scandal, no explosive feuds, no cast members openly cutting ties with Steve Harvey. On the contrary, many of the actors have often looked back on the show with gratitude and fondness. Cedric the Entertainer once said his relationship with Steve was not just colleagues but brothers, and that very chemistry was what kept the sitcom alive for 6 seasons. Still, the hierarchy of power on set was very real. Steve Harvey wasn't just the star, he was the face that guaranteed the show's success. WB Network gave him special treatment, and he had influence over scripts and production choices. That left his co-stars at times in a more passive position. Wendy Raquel Robinson once admitted in an interview that while audiences adored her role as Regina, she felt trapped in that image, hinting that her character was never developed as deeply as she had hoped. Terry J. Vaughn Levita also shared that the sitcom was both a huge blessing in her career and a box that locked her into comedic, sassy roles. This was the double-edged sword. So many actors face audiences love a character so much that it becomes hard for the performer to escape that mold in future projects. Some scripts for the show were even reshaped under the influence of the network. WB, aiming at a younger demographic, often pushed for more lighthearted schoolyard humor and soft romance rather than tackling sharper social themes. This created a different kind of hidden drama, not from personal conflict, but from systemic pressure, writers wanting to go deeper, actors wanting more challenges, while the network insisted on safe and advertiser-friendly. In the end, the drama of The Steve Harvey Show wasn't about bitter fights. It was about the tug-of-war between artists seeking greater recognition and a TV system that placed Steve Harvey at the absolute center. It was a quiet tension never exploding into scandal, but understood by everyone who was part of it. The spotlight was never shared equally. Behind-the-scenes humor. Beyond the drama, the set was also full of funny, lighthearted memories. William Lee Scott Bullethead once recalled that during a classroom scene, Steve Harvey improvised a joke that wasn't in the script. The entire cast broke into laughter so hard they had to reshoot 4 times. Director Stan Lathan decided to keep the improvised version for the final cut, but many of those ruined takes never made it to air. Merlin Santana Romeo was known for mischief behind the scenes. He often hid props or switched his co-stars' lines right before filming. It was all in good fun, though it sometimes drove the director crazy. Later, Steve Harvey himself admitted half the success of the sitcom came from improvisation. The audience thought we were acting, but a lot of the time we were just cracking each other up. These small moments became part of the show's soul, giving it a natural, down-to-earth feel that perfectly fit the vibe of a schoolyard comedy. Pressure from WB Network. In the 1990s, WB Network was still a small player, constantly competing with NBC, ABC, and CBS. As a result, The Steve Harvey Show always faced pressure to deliver strong ratings. WB executives often cut budgets and pushed writers to focus on light, advertiser-friendly comedy instead of exploring deeper social issues the cast wanted to tackle. Rumor has it that one episode about race and education was written but scrapped by WB for being too heavy. This only added to the cast's frustration with creative limits. Ultimately, after 6 seasons, WB decided to end the show even though the ratings were still solid. The official reason given was that Steve Harvey wanted to focus on talk shows and his personal career. But many insiders believe WB simply didn't want to keep funding a sitcom whose costs were rising, while still being treated as secondary compared to hit white-led shows. Celebrated by the community, overlooked by Hollywood. For all the debates and behind-the-scenes struggles, one truth can't be denied. The Steve Harvey Show left a deep mark on the black community. From 1996 to 2002, it became a staple of family television, a place where black teens could see themselves reflected on screen as mischievous students, dedicated teachers, and warm, funny relationships. Thanks to that influence, the cast was honored repeatedly by the NAACP Image Awards, one of the most prestigious recognitions in the African American community. Terry J. Vaughn Levita Jenkins won 3 consecutive NAACP awards for Outstanding Supporting Actress. Wendy Raquel Robinson. Regina Greer received multiple nominations for her role as the sharp, unforgettable principal. Steve Harvey himself was recognized for bringing to TV a positive, humorous, but non-stereotypical image of a black man. On the other hand, mainstream Hollywood ignored the show. Across its entire 6-year run, The Steve Harvey Show never received a single Emmy nomination, while white sitcoms like Friends or Frasier dominated awards season year after year. This paradox angered many fans who saw it as proof of Hollywood's bias. Black sitcoms, no matter how impactful, were still treated as second-tier entertainment, unworthy of standing alongside mainstream series. Steve Harvey once admitted bitterly in an interview, "We never needed Emmy to know our worth. Our people laughed. Our people saw themselves in us. That's the award that mattered." The fact that The Steve Harvey Show was overlooked by the Emmys wasn't just an awards oversight, it reflected a systemic injustice. While the black community embraced the sitcom as a cultural landmark, Hollywood only recognized shows that fit the white mainstream standard. And that very divide made the sitcom even more special. It didn't need a golden trophy to prove its value. It was validated by the memories, the laughter, and the connection of millions of black viewers for more than 2 decades. The cast of The Steve Harvey Show life, today, and their astonishing net worth. More than 20 years since the legendary schoolyard sitcom, The Steve Harvey Show ended, the lives of its cast have taken very different turns. Some became television moguls, some continued working quietly, some chose private lives, and one left this world far too soon. But the one thing they all share is the unforgettable mark they left on fans. Steve Harvey, from Mr. Hightower to a $200 million empire. Back then, Steve Harvey was the heart of the sitcom. Today, he's still at the center of American entertainment. He now hosts Family Feud, Celebrity Family Feud, and Judge Steve Harvey. Beyond that, he's a best-selling author, the head of Steve Harvey Global, and the owner of ventures in real estate, fashion, and media production. Steve's net worth is estimated at around $200 million with an annual income of $50 million. Hosting Family Feud alone brings him about $10 million a year. From a man who once lived in a car for 3 years, Steve Harvey has become a symbol of perseverance and success. Steve's close friend Cedric the Entertainer also achieved remarkable success. After the sitcom, Cedric made his mark with Barbershop, voiced Madagascar, and today stars in the CBS series The Neighborhood. His net worth is estimated at around $25 million. Beyond acting, he runs the AC Barbecue brand, organizes charity golf tournaments, and in 2019 was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Cedric's life is proof of an artist who knows how to balance art business and community service. Wendy Raquel Robinson, who made audiences laugh as Principal Regina, still shines today. After the sitcom, she achieved huge success with her role as Tasha Mack in The Game and reprised it in the 2022 reboot. Wendy's net worth is estimated at $4 million. In addition to acting, she founded the Amazing Grace Conservatory, a nonprofit arts academy for underprivileged kids, where stars like Issa Rae once trained. For Wendy, success is not only her own career, but also the legacy she leaves in the community. Terry J. Vaughn, who won 3 NAACP Image Awards for her role as Levita Alize Jenkins, is now a multi-talented artist. After the sitcom, she appeared in All of Us, Meet the Browns Greenleaf, and founded Nina Holiday Entertainment, her own production company. Terry's net worth is estimated between $4 million. Beyond her career, she is a mother of 3 and has stepped into directing. In middle age, Terry has chosen a steady path, working behind the camera to create projects with her own stamp. William Lee Scott. The once goofy bullethead went on to appear in films like October Sky, Gone in 60 Seconds, and The Butterfly Effect. Married since 2002 with 2 sons, he has lived a quiet life. While his net worth hasn't been publicly reported, his steady career with supporting roles in major films has provided stability. In 2021, William reunited with Cedric in The Neighborhood, a moment that brought back memories of the golden years. Merlin Santana. The charming Romeo of the sitcom tragically passed away in 2002 at the age of just 26 in a shooting. No number can capture his worth because Merlin's true legacy lives on in his smile, his charisma, and the grief of fans who still mourn him. Today, the cast of The Steve Harvey Show has each gone down a different path. Steve Harvey commands a $200 million empire. Cedric continues to shine with $25 million. Wendy and Terry remain successful with a few million each in meaningful projects. William lives quietly, but still close to the screen. And Merlin Santana will forever remain a youthful memory. The sitcom may have ended, but the lives of its cast became the continuation, filled with triumph touched by tragedy, and above all marked by an indelible place in American television history.